Hello, everyone, and welcome to Government Business Today. I am your host, Irvin Hughes, and I'm on here with every week my good friend, the Hall of Famer from the Wall Street, Robert Lendrim.
Hey,
Robert,
Eric.
how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. How about you, man?
Hey, I'm really good, man. Listen, guys, I'm really excited about today. We have a special guest that we're going to have on with us today, and if you are on our podcast or you're streaming on your favorite social media, you'll see our good friend Monty, who is joining us live here today. And so we're going to fire some questions at him, and he's going to give us some good information and some insights on how you can build your government contracting business. As you know, each week here on Government Business Today, we do a lot to try and connect you to tools, resources, tips, and strategies to help you grow your government contracting business. So as we do this, we're going to let Monty sit tight for just a second. He's going to join in just a moment, but I want you, Monty, to understand that we're probably going to lean over here and hit you up with a few questions here as we go along. So I hope you're okay with that, and we'll give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, okay?
I'm absolutely okay with that. I'm happy to be here, but I'm a little nervous. I really prefer open book tests, and so I'll do the best I can under the circumstances.
Yeah, Monty, that's what Google. That's what Google's for. On the fly. Like last night, I was talking with my son, trying to explain to him what the DCF model is, discount cash flow, and I'm trying to explain it to him, and I was like, you know what? Just Google it, man. If I can tell you, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. So go to Google, look it up on Investopedia.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, Robert, so since last week, man, what have you been into this week?
A lot. It's been busy, man. It's been, from fielding calls to putting out term sheets, as you know, on some deals, and there's just a lot of activity that I'm seeing up here, at least in Connecticut. Connecticut continues to be really busy with respect to the infrastructure and the spending. Although I will say I learned a new phrase just yesterday, actually, called shrinkflation, which basically means that the same size of Doritos has been shrunk, but you're still paying the same cost. So that actually has a term. It's called shrinkflation, and I'm like, okay, well, you can't shrinkflation lumber for the city of Boston or things along those lines, but they're going to pay up. So let's get them some money.
Wow, that's amazing, Monty. I gotta ask, have you heard of shrinkflation?
I have heard of shrinkflation.
Seriously.
Every time I pick up a Snickers bar, it seems to get smaller and smaller and smaller.
But you're paying the same price. So
exactly.
There's no inflation at all.
Exactly.
Man, you guys got to know now. I know, Monty, you're out in metropolitan Chattanooga, man.
He was in Chattanooga. Now you're down in Atlanta, right?
I'm actually in Atlanta now.
But, wow.
My home,
so you're repping Chattanooga. I see. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. Well, see, I'm out here in Texas, man. So I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because, out here, Texas is still a republic, right? Mm-hmm. And so the way the folks in Texas operate is they sort of agree to cooperate with the rest of the United States. I'm not real sure what that mentality is or how that came about, but it's a whole thing, man.
Well, I moved to Houston right out of college, and I lived in Houston for 2.5 years. And so I had to be educated about the role of Texas. They've got a bumper sticker out there that everybody has. It says, American by birth, Texan by the grace of God.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's good. That's very good.
That is exactly right. That is exactly right. Well, hey, so Robert, I've been, in some of these meetings and trainings and things that's been going on here.
Yeah, but you did the one yesterday, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm doing I'm doing a training series with some of in collaboration with some of our local government agencies here, And one of the reasons why I want to bring that up is because, guys, if you are looking to start up and or grow a government contracting business, you absolutely want to make sure that you tune in each week to Government Business Today so that you can connect with us. And of course, Robert and myself and subject matter experts like Monty, you'll be able to connect with us. You'll see different webcasts and things like that in and around social media. So I say all that to say this: we do this podcast each week to help educate and sort of help you overcome some of the barriers to entry in the government contracting space. There is room for you. There is a lot of activity that's going on. There's quite a bit of activity, money, spending that is going on across all levels of government. So whether you're interested in federal, state, county, city, local, school districts, colleges and universities, transit authorities, port authorities, whatever level of government that you might be interested in, trust me when I tell you, your products or services are absolutely in demand. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to have Monty join us here this morning, guys, because he's going to share some insights with you, and we're going to kind of jump in here like we always do. I promise you guys we'll keep it light. But the point is that I think the content for today's podcast is going to be really meaningful and relevant to you. So Monty, what we're going to do, having said that, is we're going to go on and jump in because I'm excited to be able to ask you some questions and kind of get your insights on what you're seeing. And if you don't mind, go ahead and let's you introduce yourself to our audience and give us some backstory on you.
Sure. I am a native of Chattanooga, Tennessee. But I've probably spent about 15 years living in Atlanta, and I have just moved back to Atlanta from Chattanooga to open an Atlanta office for Oaklyn Consulting, which is a boutique mergers and acquisitions advisory services firm. And we can get into more a little later about exactly what Oaklyn does. But it's really funny because I was raised in a working class family in Chattanooga and ended up going to a private school there. And from that private school, I was fortunate enough to go to Harvard. And I have a degree in economics from Harvard, and which is kind of how I got into this current line of work. I've had all kinds of jobs. I've worked for the largest Coca-Cola bottler in the United States. I've worked for Marriott Corporation. I've worked for Unum Insurance Company, but mostly I've been a serial entrepreneur. I have started businesses ranging from magazine publishing to construction to consulting to financial services. To give you an idea that I may not always have the best instincts, in 2009, right in the beginning of the recession, I thought it would be a good idea to start a hedge fund. So.
Okay.
Wow.
So I've been to the School of Hard Knocks.
Sorry, guys.
So I bring the full complement of experiences. So when I talk to entrepreneurs, when I talk to business owners, I know what they're talking about. I know what they're feeling because I have been in their shoes. I haven't just studied it in school. I know it because I felt it the way they're feeling it.
You know what? That's first of all, Monty, let me just tell you, thank you so much, man, for what I call real talk, right? That's real talk because, a lot of times people like us, man, these experts, right? We'll get into social media or we'll get on a platform and we'll try and act like we've never made a mistake, right?
Exactly.
And the truth is, in business, there's this little 4-letter word called risk, right?
That's right.
Risk is a real thing. It doesn't mean that you start these things going forward and you do your best to kind of predict what the outcome is going to be. but there's so many variables and so many different things that can happen that can really disrupt a lot of things, quite frankly, completely beyond your control, right?
Exactly.
And so thank you so much for sharing that, man. I thought that was really good. So
in economics, we call those externalities.
Externalities.
They can be positive, they can be negative, but they're external to what it is we're doing.
I thought that externalities are exogenous, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I totally get it.
You know what's really cool for our listeners, guys, can you imagine what it would take to learn such a word, but you have a Harvard grad online with us live. So now I've learned about externalities, right? And so I am going to use that. I promise you, I'm going to use it today. I'm going to impress somebody, right? No, that's great. Hey, Robert, I don't know if if any questions comes to mind for Monty, man. So let's see if we can jump in and fire off some questions.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think about, and I've talked here a few times about all the infrastructure, that we see up here in Connecticut. But I mean, with all the infrastructure and the COVID recovery dollars coming in from government, you would think that, getting a contract would be like shooting fish in the barrel. I mean, is your opinion that now is a good time to be a government contractor or getting into this space? Or what's your take from an investment perspective or from a business perspective? What's your take and what does that look like?
Well, I think it is a good time to be a government contractor. But I don't know if you guys are whitewater canoers or have had that experience. But when you're in a canoe and you're in whitewater, you've got to keep your paddle in the water. You can dig in and you can go faster than the current, or you can push back and you can go slower than the current. But if you just sit there and put your paddle across the bow of that canoe and you let the current take you, you're not going to have a very good time on the river that day. And so we're in a time where the current in this economic river, this infrastructure money that's coming from the government, the water is flowing pretty freely. But some of us are just sitting there going along for the ride. And that's not the way to go. If you are in business, you've got to have a strategy. You've got to know what works for you. You've got to know what doesn't work for you. I mean, if the government comes along and they build you a nice super highway from where you are to Chicago, but you really want to go to Boston, well, don't be fooled in getting on that nice highway to Chicago. You got to figure out the best way to get to Boston. And so, dealing with the government can be tricky. I look at the balance sheets of a lot of companies where they do business with the government, and I'm always stunned when I look at the accounts receivable line. I go, why are your receivables so high? And they say, well, I deal with the government. They slow pay me. So I've got to be able to finance those receivables. So sometimes, when you're getting those contracts, you also have to think about your cash flow. You got to think about your ability to finance those jobs. I have seen companies with plenty of work go out of business because they ran out of money.
Monty, were those more like services or providing of goods? Because we see that a lot with the service providers, the primes and the secondaries, but not so much on the guys that are providing goods.
Well, I've got to say, I'm talking mostly about the service guys. That's what I've been looking at more than anything.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's hilarious that you brought up the highway to Boston because one of our star, rising star clients is actually in Boston, a woman-owned business. And we're really excited to have her company as part of our group that we're taking forward in some of the opportunities. In fact, we just recently approved some working capital and a receivable line for her company going forward. And so I'm glad we're on this subject about cash flow, because one of the things that we find is that there are a lot of companies out there that are growing, Monty. I know you know that. But one of the challenges, of course, is as these guys' revenues grow, right, the next thing you know, the financial pressures seem to be growing also. And it seems that a lot of times these companies aren't quite set up to finance that growth. And I can tell you from my experience, growth costs money, Monty. It just does.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And the minute you start growing, you need more people, you need more computers, you just need more. And
Right.
so why do you think that sort of thing happens to business owners?
Well, we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. And I think business owners who are successful, they want to keep doing the things over and over again that brought them that success. But you guys know that in business we have to pivot, and we have to be ready for the curveball that's coming down the pipe. And I think that business owners, particularly small business owners, and I'm going to even be more specific, I'm going to say women and minority business owners don't always have access to not only capital, but really good advice. Um, you know, uh, you know, we all have heard lawyers say, the time to call a lawyer is at the beginning, when you're negotiating the contract, not when there's a dispute, you got to bring the lawyer in to figure out what you wrote on the back of that napkin that you thought was a contract, right?
Yeah.
So good advice is really, really important. And now that I've been in Atlanta talking to, primarily African American business owners, I'm hearing people say, "Wow, I am so glad you're here." And the more we meet, the more we talk, the more we work, the more they understand that their needs were even greater than they realized. So I think it's important to pay for good advice up front. That keeps you out of trouble, and it helps you figure out where you want to go.
Well, man, you could not be more spot on in talking about paying for good advice. I have a philosophy that business is just a team sport. Why? Because nobody is excellent at everything, right?
Right.
And so oftentimes I find out that for some reason, business owners, especially specifically to your point, small business owners seem to be reasonably reluctant to want to literally invest. And yes, there's an investment, not a spend, but an investment in surrounding yourself with good advisors and people who will always tell you the truth, frankly, whether you like it or not. But they have your best interest in mind. And Robert, how do you see that? Because do you run into any of that?
Yeah, actually, it's a great question, Irv. In fact, it's like I work with a variety of companies, as you know, and frequently they rely on it's all about the communication and the transparency of giving your opinion, and sometimes you say things that they may not want to hear, but it's always rooted from from being in their best interests. And in fact, actually, Monty, what I was going to ask is, do you see a lot of companies that have board of advisors or mentors, or do you see that as far as like, gee whiz, I really wish that I had this, or no, I don't need that? And how would you be open to differentiate between that?
I think that there are a lot of companies that have what I would call kitchen cabinets. They have associates, they have friends, they meet for coffee, they share war stories, they give each other advice.
Yeah.
But small business owners, I believe, are really, they really like to keep their financials close to the vest.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want anybody, looking under the hood too carefully. And so I think that small business owners have advisors, but they come in the guise of friends and family. Most small business owners don't have a formal board or formal board of advisors where they are totally transparent and they say, look, this is, here are my numbers. This is what I'm going through. Can you help me out? It's like going to the doctor and you fill out that form and it says how many cocktails do you have a week? I don't know anybody who tells the truth about that number.
Yeah, I'd be guilty on that one. Oh yeah, no, and those doctors immediately are like, yeah, whatever that person says, it's times 5. They just know that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Exactly.
It's interesting, Monty, because we had Monty's comments are very similar to what Andrew Fraser was saying a couple of weeks ago. It's about not working in your business, but working on your business. Right. And I've frankly have stolen that line, and that not that line, but that philosophy. It's very true. So thank you for sharing that.
So Monty, I'm not gonna let you off the hook because I heard in your introduction that you're specifically kind of in that M&A space, right?
That's right.
And so, so small companies, when we talk about M&A, to me it sounds like you got to be this big giant behemoth company, and you're AT&T, and somehow you're gonna fight with the Bell system, as it were, in the old days. And so as it pertains to M&A, mergers and acquisitions, how can a small business benefit from having a consultant who is actually in that space?
Well, M&A is about transactions. So let's think about it in terms of real estate. Everybody wants to go out and buy a house. Some people, buy a $10 million mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, and other people are buying a $50,000 starter home in maybe not the nicest neighborhood, but fundamentally they're the same transaction, and so. Oaklyn Consulting, while we certainly do larger transactions, we were founded because we saw an opportunity to work with smaller people, smaller companies, and bring to them the resources and the knowledge that the AT&Ts of the world have access to. I love talking to business owners and them telling me, well, we'd love to grow, but we have plateaued. We haven't been able to get beyond where we are. And I will say, well, have you thought about buying another company? Have you thought about looking somewhere where they have the assets that you would like to have? They have the market share that you would like to have. Why don't you just go out and let's see if we can buy that business? And it's really something that most small business people never think about. And on the reverse side of that, if you started a business and you reach, 65 or 70 years of age, and you're trying to figure out, how do I get the value out of this company that I've built for the last 30, 40 years? That's something that most business owners haven't thought about, or they don't think about until it's time for them to retire. But everyone needs an exit strategy. Everyone needs to have a succession plan. You've got to know how you're going to get there and where you want to go. I think it was Yogi Berra that said, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere, or some other place. He goes, if you don't know where you're going, you'll wind up some other place. That's right. In typical Yogi fashion. And so you don't want to be like that. So if you are still trying to grow your business, I think acquisition is a way to be able to do that. And if you're thinking about transitioning to retirement, there are a set of strategies that you have to put in place, and there are things that you can think about before the day that you retire. I mean, most small business owners, when they're running the business, they're trying to minimize their taxable income because they don't want to give that money to the IRS. but the value of your company is in that income. So sometimes you've got to recast financials, and you want to show a prospective buyer that there are assets there, that there's a revenue stream that's worth buying. So the mentality of selling the business is different from the mentality of operating the business sometimes.
Monty, how long does that normally take for somebody to recast their financial? I mean, are you saying like, is that a 1 year, 2, 3, 4 year process of switching that around?
I think it's probably closer to a 1 year, process. There's some people who have great financials. They keep great records. Their books are impeccable. And then there are other people who throw receipts in a shoebox, and you've got to kind of sort through that.
You know what? When you said recast financials, I'm thinking audited financials, not small business. So apologies, right. I misunderstood because redoing audited financials is challenging.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of minutes left here, Monty. So what do you see as some of the challenges that, say, small woman-owned businesses could run into in this M&A space? Because we talked about succession planning. That's something I think is probably a foreign language for a lot of small business owners. But having that being sort of the backdrop, what are some of those challenges that you see that small business owners run into?
I think the number one challenge that businesses are going to face, particularly in this new environment where, we've got COVID recovery dollars, we've got infrastructure money that's coming in, I think scale is more important now than it ever has been. So it might have been fine for the last 10 years to have been a $5 million company. But now, because of the size of some of these contracts, it may be better to be a $20 million company. And so you may have to form joint venture arrangements. You may have to collaborate with larger entities. And what I'm seeing, and this is maybe more in the private sector than the public sector, companies like Facebook, that's one that I've come across. They're asking their small contractors who have been subs to larger prime contractors. They're asking those small companies to be prime contractors now. And so subs are having to learn and having to capitalize, making that transition from being a sub to being the prime. And I think that from that standpoint, these small companies that can figure out how to become the prime contractor in government contracts and not just the sub, they're the ones who are going to really knock it out of the park. And so scale is super important, and learning how to be the prime contractor is important.
Well, I tell you what, that is fantastic, and that's great advice too, Monty. And again, man, I'm thrilled to have had you on. Listen, you got to come back and join us here in the future because this is information that a lot of our audience, especially government contractors, would need to know.
Yeah.
And especially to be able to go after some of those larger opportunities. But you bring up such a great point about helping these small companies really get in a position to be a prime as opposed to being a first or second tier sub on a lot of these opportunities. So I'm really excited that we had this opportunity to talk with you, man. So just in the way of wrapping up, so if one of our listeners wanted to get a hold of you or got a question for you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The best thing to do is to go to our website, which is oaklynconsulting.com, and that's OAKLYN. It's not like like Oakland, California. It's Oaklyn Consulting. And my email is mbruell, MBRUELL, @oaklyn.consulting.
That's awesome. Hey, listen, Monty, this has been great. Thanks so much for joining us. I know our audience will certainly benefit from the content that we've covered. Robert, any closing things with the last seconds we got?
No, just Monty, this was really interesting, and maybe next time we talk about that shift from the prime from secondary to the prime. That could really be a fantastic podcast topic. We're really grateful for your support and continued success.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I'm always willing to come back. And Irv, if you find yourself needing a new partner down the road, feel free to reach out.
Listen, I want you to know, Monty, when you offer me something like that, I am not polite. I will take you up on it.
There you go. All right, guys.
Robert, Irv, this has been great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we do too. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Tune in next week. Same time, same place. We'll be right back.
Be well. Cheers.